The sinking of the RMS Titanic stands as one of the most enduring and haunting tragedies in modern history. Launched with great fanfare as the epitome of technological advancement and luxury, the Titanic was, for a brief moment, a floating symbol of human progress and national pride. Yet, in the early hours of April 15, 1912, that optimism was shattered beneath the icy waters of the North Atlantic. Over 1,500 souls perished, and more than a century later, the story continues to echo through generations, captivating the world with its chilling lessons and enduring mysteries. One of the most unsettling truths about the Titanic disaster is that, in theory, every single person aboard could have been saved. When the ship struck an iceberg at 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912, there was still a window of time, a matter of hours, before it would finally break apart and disappear below the waves at 2:20 a.m. The RMS Carpathia, which would ultimately rescue all 710 survivors, did not arrive until after the Titanic had sunk. But the Carpathia wasn't the only ship within reach. In fact, the SS Californian was even closer. Around 12:45 a.m., as the Titanic's fate hung in the balance, officers on deck spotted the lights of the Californian on the horizon. Frantic crew members fired white distress flares, their desperate signals piercing the night. These flares were seen by the Californian's crew, yet fate intervened in the form of human error. The ship's only radio operator was asleep, and the captain, misinterpreting the flares as signals from a ship simply stopped in the ice, chose to ignore them. Modern experts believe that had the Californian responded, the majority, perhaps even all, of the Titanic's passengers could have been saved. The exact number of lives lost that night is itself a subject of mystery. Officially, 1,514 perished, but the real figure could be anywhere between 1,490 and 1,635. The confusion stemmed from the chaos of the evacuation, disorganized passenger lists, and the presence of travelers using false names, often to conceal their true identities for personal or business reasons. Even today, the identities of more than 30 victims buried in Halifax, Canada, remain unknown. In 2008, nearly a century later, advances in DNA testing brought closure to one family. The youngest victim, a baby, was finally identified as Sydney Leslie Goodwin, ending 96 years of uncertainty. A tragic irony lies at the heart of the Titanic's story. It was not only the ship's collision with the iceberg that doomed so many, but the decisions and indecisions of those in charge. Perhaps the most glaring lapse was the insufficient number of lifeboats. Although the Titanic was designed to carry over 3,500 people, it left port with only 20 lifeboats, enough for just about 200 souls. The original design had called for 48 lifeboats, but that number was reduced to keep the deck spacious and visually appealing. Style won out over safety, underpinned by the widespread belief that the Titanic was unsinkable. Few, if any, imagined that a full evacuation would ever be needed. Even the limited lifeboat capacity was undermined by a decision that still baffles historians: the cancellation of the lifeboat drill scheduled for April 14th. Captain Edward Smith, for reasons unknown, called off this crucial exercise. Without the benefit of a drill, both passengers and crew were left unprepared to respond to disaster. In the chaos, lifeboats that could hold 60 people were launched with only half that number, further reducing the chances of survival. The reasons behind the cancellation remain a mystery, but the consequences were tragically clear. In the midst of panic and despair, stories of extraordinary courage and selflessness emerged. Among the most poignant is that of the Titanic's musicians. 8 men tasked with providing entertainment for the passengers became unexpected heroes. As the ship listed and chaos erupted, they played on, offering music to soothe the terrified crowd. Survivors would later recall the steady melodies that drifted above the screams and the confusion, music that brought a measure of comfort in the face of certain death. None of the musicians survived, and only 3 of their bodies were ever recovered. The youngest was just 21 years old, a reminder of the youth and promise lost that night. Sometimes it is the smallest details that carry the greatest weight. Such was the case with the key to the ship's binoculars locker. Second Officer David Blair, reassigned at the last minute, accidentally took the key with him when he left the ship in Southampton. As a result, the lookouts on the Titanic were forced to rely solely on their vision, unaided by binoculars that might have allowed them to spot the iceberg in time to change course. It is a sobering thought that such a minor oversight could have consequences of such magnitude. Among the survivors was a woman whose experiences would earn her a place in maritime legend. Violet Jessop, a stewardess, became known as Miss Unsinkable for surviving not only the Titanic disaster, but also incidents on both of its sister ships. She was aboard the Olympic when it collided with a cruiser in 1911, escaping unharmed. She survived the Titanic by escaping on a lifeboat in 1912. Later, during World War I, she was on the Britannic when it struck a mine and sank. She survived yet again. Her repeated brushes with death capture the eerie unpredictability of fate. Perhaps the greatest act of heroism that night came from the ship's engineers. All 25 engineers, along with 6 electrical engineers, 2 boilermakers, a plumber, and a clerk, remained at their posts as the ship sank. They kept the engines running, ensuring that lights and water pumps continued to function as long as possible. Their sacrifice bought precious time for hundreds to escape. None survived, but their bravery is commemorated in a memorial in Southampton, England, a silent tribute to those who gave their lives so others might live. In the end, the story of the Titanic is not only a tale of catastrophe and loss, it is a story of human error, sacrifice, and the unpredictable hand of fate. From missed signals and cancelled drills to the unsung heroes who played music in the darkness, every detail offers a lesson, a reminder of the consequences of complacency and the power of courage in the face of disaster.